I do love a good hook. You know, something that just kind of grabs you, an elevator pitch too enticing, too intriguing to pass up. And the hook of Teeth, Blood, Cotillion recently proved way too powerful for me to resist. In the game's own words, it is a grotesque, single-session, standalone tabletop role-playing game set during a single night at a high society ball in a cursed corner of 18th century England. The players are formidable assassins, disguised as husband-hunting ingenues who must root out the occult evil that lurks in the manor, destroy it, and ideally, survive. Assassins disguised as debutantes, Regency Ball, occult evil, suicide mission. I'm in. As far as hooks go, that is pretty strong, and I hope that hook is doing it for you. I mean, you clicked on this video, and I hope you'll keep watching, and trust me, I will know if you do stop watching, so please stay. But is there more going on here than just an attention-grabbing setup? Well, I recently got a table together to play this, and let me tell you, not only does Teeth, Blood, Cotillion deliver on its promise and then some, it might just be one of my all-time favourite one-shots. So, yeah, I think I just need to rewind a little bit. Teeth is a tabletop role-playing game of occult criminality and monster hunting written by Jim Rossignol and Marsh Davis, released in 2023. It's built on the Forged in the Dark system and sees players take on the roles of hunters who have been commissioned by the Crown to identify, track, and destroy some of the many disturbing creatures which plague a remote tract of 18th century England called the Vale of Duluth. However, the players also share a secret agenda, though each may have a very different reason for pursuing it. The Hunter's Commission, however, has added time pressure, as they can only remain in the Vale for 1 year, after which point they will be deemed too contaminated to leave. If the players manage to avoid death or corruption and complete their mission, escaping the Vale before winter is through, they can claim a victory of sorts, though it is likely one that came at a horrible cost. So that's Teeth in a nutshell, and what is interesting about this game and how it was released is that the core book was preceded by 3 zines, 3 self-contained games, each designed to teach you how to play, stripping the mechanics right back, slowly drip-feeding more rules and more information about the world and its lore as you progress. The first 2 zines are self-contained one-shots. Night of the Hogmen sees the players taking on the roles of waylaid travellers, trying to fend off ravening hordes of hogmen, doing whatever they must to survive until daybreak. The aforementioned Blood Cotillion sees the players as assassins going undercover at a Regency Ball. And the third of these zines, Stranger and Stranger, is a mini-campaign designed to be played over several sessions, where the players take on the roles of mutated bumpkins trying to cling to their humanity as they attempt to save their village, and just maybe be reunited with their favourite pig. 3 self-contained standalone games, each with unique and interesting setups and challenges packed with incredible art and lore. Now, you can absolutely jump in with any one of these and play it by itself, but if you want the full modular Teeth experience, then you can play through them in order as a way of onboarding to a full campaign. Whilst this modular learning approach isn't unique, it is certainly uncommon, and I think the way this is done through these zines is very clever, because these aren't just bland tutorials. These games are teeming with life, with evocative characters bursting with eccentric details. The writers immerse you in the world from the very first page, and most importantly, they make sure to leave you in no uncertain terms as to the game's tone. Because if there's one thing that you should know about Teeth, is that whilst it's dark and twisted, and the situations you will run into are often bleak and awful, the game is also really, really, really funny. The Vale of Duluth is a place where horses can't die and lint can gain malevolent sentience. Every NPC comes with their own litany of absurdist quirks, and player inventories are home to such useful adventuring gear as an unfinished treatise on female wickedness, a friendly lump of coal with its own woolen hat, or a pie filled with live spiders. And Speaking of pies, the core rulebook literally grinds to a halt mid-page to present a period-accurate recipe for eel pie, which, to be fair, isn't just a joke. There is an exhaustively detailed cursed pie table for players to roll on later in the book. And talk about committing to the bit. And this humour extends to the artwork. I mean, look at this and tell me that this isn't the single greatest image you've seen all week. All this is to say that the humour and tone of Teeth is important, integral even, and the writers make sure that this humour and tone runs through all the zines and the main game, like grisly connective tissue holding together what could have been a bunch of disembodied parts and animating this exquisite corpse of a game into life. Yeah, I know that sentence doesn't make sense, but it sounds cool, so shut up. Right, Blood Cotillion. That is why I'm talking to you today. And yeah, I wasn't joking when I said that it was maybe my favourite one-shot, so I suppose I better explain myself. The setup is great, yes. Assassins posing as debutantes to uncover an occult horror at a Regency ball. That's just good value. I think that is indisputable, maybe even on a scientific level. But the way the game delivers on that premise elevates it. And that begins with the player characters, the ingenues. All the player characters, as they are in all the zines, are pre-gens, and I know I always react like that when I hear the word pre-gens too, because like, oh, there's going to be a strong one, there's going to be a clever one, there's going to be a sneaky one, how exciting. But Blood Cotillion, like all three of the zines, come with some of the most unique, flavorful and downright fun pre-gens I have ever seen. There are 8 to choose from, each with completely unique inventories and abilities, and we will get to those in a minute. But to go back to the point that I was starting to make, the ingenues are a huge part of why this game works so well, because even though all these young women are trained experts, highly capable and dangerous, merciless killers, none of them are particularly good at subterfuge, and herein lies the central tension of the game. Our assassins have to try and discover the whereabouts of the occult horror, which they know going in only as the Blood Shrine, and they need to do that before the night is out, and they know they also must destroy it. But to do so requires discretion, and they just aren't very good at it. Miss Lizzie Ambleclot is a ruthless killer. Put any sort of sharpened object in her hand and she will find a jugular vein so fast you won't even see it. However, she must make a successful follow-up roll to avoid being utterly transfixed by the blood she has spilled. Miss Harriet Crumb has a toxic touch, but the sight of her bare skin and, to quote the game, the things squirming beneath it will cause no end of alarm if noticed. And Miss Eleanor Greebwood, well, she can artfully mimic the noise of any animal, but should her stress rack up, she will stop whatever she is doing and be compelled to howl like a wolf. Even the ingenue, who is best suited for the job, Miss Beatrice Gland Mickleforth, the names in this game are amazing, well, she'll struggle not to draw attention to herself because her cat-like grace and agility appears to come from the fact that she is actually part cat, with a prehensile tail and opposable toes which will scandalise polite society if seen. So we have this elite crack team of assassins going undercover, and they are just bad at being undercover, and they are forced to partake in the formalities of a high society ball, the dancing, the polite conversation, the parlour games, all without arousing suspicion. And talking of suspicion, that's important because in Teeth, Blood Cotillion, suspicion is the key resource that the GM actively uses against the players. Each of the players has a suspicion clock on their character sheet. If you've played any Forged in the Dark games, you'll be familiar with clocks. But here they are used to measure how much attention the ingenues are drawing to themselves. And as GM, you'll be making the players mark segments on these suspicion clocks, often as the complications rack up and the heat begins to intensify every time dice hit the table. And they can't just drop the pretense and go in all guns blazing, because the ball at Buckle Ridge Manor just so happens to be full of the sorts of people who wouldn't take too kindly to a group of interlopers, especially undercover assassins. Most notably, this includes the eagle-eyed house staff, but also an entire garrison of off-duty militia blowing off steam, which, as far as obstacles go, is pretty major. So we know that the ingenue's goal is to find and destroy the blood shrine, whatever that might be, but to do so, they must prize information out of some key individuals. Okay, it's time to meet the Kelmorton brothers. The ball is being thrown by Lord Kirkland Kelmorton, who is trying to pay off his 4 utterly repellent sons, Branforth, Wilfram, Trothermere, and Darren, with a wife by the end of the night. It is these 4 brothers that the ingenues must try and get close to learn their weaknesses and secrets, for between them they all hold vital clues as to the whereabouts of the blood shrine and what its terrible power is. And these fucking guys, like the Kelmorton brothers, are absolutely wretched. The loutish Branforth is a military man, openly bragging about the various war crimes he has committed in the name of the crown. Wilfram is this arch manipulator, orchestrating things to his own advantage from behind the scenes. Trothermere is a self-styled playboy, a louche gambler, a ladies' man, and Darren, well, Darren might just be the worst of the lot. A sinister little jam-obsessed freak and, shall we say, peephole enjoyer. Each brother knows a little something about what's going on and what their father is up to, but not the full story. So the ingenues will need to use whatever means necessary to learn what they can to unlock the secret of the blood shrine. But this is no easy feat. Awful as they may be, the brothers are still wealthy, eligible bachelors in a manor house full of potential suitors vying for their attention. The ingenues must employ their extensive training and feminine wiles to isolate the brothers, extract the information, and then, let's be real, dispose of them, because if you spend any amount of time with any of the Kelmorton boys, you'll realise it's just the right thing to do. Like, humane even. They're real dicks. So, the setup is solid gold, the characters are vividly drawn, and the world is luridly compelling. But it's the system that is perfectly tailored to deliver the payload. The forged in the dark engine is like Maxwell's demon, generating endless complications and drama like a perpetual trouble machine. And as the ball gets going and the party gets into full swing, the ingenues will soon be up to their exquisitely dressed necks in problems. And that's where the suspicion clocks really shine. Generally, the clocks represent how close the ingenues are to blowing their cover, but the game is structured in a way that as they start to discover key information about the whereabouts and true meaning of the blood shrine, events will trigger to up the stakes. One such event is the arrival of Verity Deverall, the fearsome local bailiff who has been informed there may be interlopers at the ball with ill intent, and she will of course be instantly drawn to whoever has the most heat, the most segments of their suspicion clock filled. As the stakes are raised, the ingenues are forced into taking greater and greater risks, which in turn generates more consequences, and you can see where this is going. No matter how well the assassins do, the wheels will eventually come off, and when they do, it is spectacular. I suppose one nagging doubt that those of you who have played Forged in the Dark games might have is how a pre-written adventure works in that system, and I have to say that was my first thought too, because these games are about the players leading the action and typically defining what the score or job is that they are trying to do. And then it's up to the GM to skillfully bring that harebrained scheme to life on the fly. Well, whilst the players won't get to define what the task at hand is here, they absolutely get total freedom with the approach. And there are so many ways to skin this particular cat. The game goes out of its way to give you everything you could possibly need to enable the players to execute their scheme, including a detailed map of Buckleridge Manor, dozens of NPCs, and details about the evening, right down to made-up bridge rules and a list of things that a roving ghost might say to you if you get lost wandering around the grounds. And as a GM, you are encouraged to use as little or as much of it as you like. The real joy of Blood Cotillion is turning these deadly women loose on the ball, marveling at their attempts to pose as delicate flowers, trying to get close to the worst people imaginable, and seeing it spin wildly out of control. You get to sit back and watch faux pas turn to scandalous affront, turn to straight up violence. The modular learning approach to playing Teeth is not only a great way to learn the game, it's actually a great way to learn how to run Forged in the Dark games full stop. If you're coming from more traditional systems where the GM just tells everyone what's going on and the players roll dice, then this is an insanely fun, low-stakes way to move over to a more collaborative style of game, whilst still having the safety net of a robustly detailed, structured adventure. But also seasoned Forged in the Dark GMs will be able to take a quick look at the veritable banquet of obstacles on offer and set about throwing them in the player's way as they inevitably make a pig's ear out of a silk purse. And as a side note, this is also a great one-shot if you want to improve your pacing as a GM, because I know that don't split the party is sort of a joke at this point, but some players and GMs still believe it, and that's born out of the fact that a lot of GMs don't know how to do it properly. But you have to split the party here, at least for the first half of the game. The players have a lot of ground to cover, so being able to cut between them and build tension is a vital skill to master, and the text itself has lots of really solid advice and tips for anyone, again perhaps coming from games where splitting the party is actively discouraged. It's just an all-round great workout for a GM looking to learn how to run a player-led game. You've got so much freedom to really make it your own, but the text is also specific enough that you will need to hit some key points for it to work. You'll not only have to be able to cut between the ingenues effectively, you'll need to juggle the various threats that are bubbling away in the background, you'll need to be flexible with how you reveal clues, and have a good idea of how to escalate things when the shit hits the fan. So like I said, I actually played this game. I got some absolute gun players together, and over 2 nights we had an absolute blast. And how did our operation go? Well, it was a real fucking mess, to be honest. And if you want a deep dive into how our game of Teeth Blood Cotillion shook out, then over on my Patreon, you will be able to hear me talk at length about who played who danced with who stabbed who to death in a cupboard, that sort of thing. So that is Teeth Blood Cotillion, and you can pick it up for $8 online. Night of the Hogmen is pay what you want, and Stranger and Stranger I think is only $10. If you're lucky enough to get Teeth in a bundle like I did, you'll get all of them together along with the core book, False Kingdom, which is another standalone campaign released after the others, and More Teeth, which is a splat book that has more lore, more scenarios, more NPCs, and more monsters. And if that isn't enough, you should absolutely check out Gold Teeth, the standalone game set in the Teeth universe, but with the action moving away from Northern England to the Caribbean Sea. It's Teeth with pirates. So yeah, that's good fun, isn't it? Gold Teeth successfully crowdfunded last year, and pre-orders are still open if you want to jump on that for when the game comes out in 2026. You will find links to all this and more in the down belows. Thanks to all my devilish patrons for supporting the channel and supporting what I do. I could not do this without you. So thank you, thank you, thank you, a million times thank you. I'll be back next time, but until then, it is farewell and safe passage.